wild, isn't it? Like we talk so much about equality in relationships these days, which of course is a good thing. We've, broken down all these old barriers.
Yeah.
But sometimes it feels like, I don't know, there's this lack of spark. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like in trying to make everything the same, have we lost some of the differences that actually create attraction?
Yeah.
That real pull.
I think that's such a sharp observation, and actually it's at the heart of what David Deida talks about in his book, The Way of the Superior Man. It's a pretty intense look at how masculine and feminine energy work together, not like traditional gender roles, but deeper energy.
Right, exactly. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack some of Deida's big ideas, help the learner understand how these masculine and feminine energies, how they impact us, not just in relationships, but in work, personal growth, all of it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's important to be upfront that Deida he's mostly writing to men, specifically men who identify with a masculine essence and who are, in relationships with women who have more of a feminine essence.
But honestly, I think the core principles here, this energetic polarity stuff, the importance of purpose, that's relevant to anyone, regardless of your gender or relationship style.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it. First up, this whole idea of sexual essence. What is Deida actually talking about there?
Okay, so basically, Deida says each of us has a dominant sexual essence. It's like your fundamental energy. And there are three main types: masculine, feminine, and balanced.
And just to clarify, this isn't about like your biological sex.
Right, exactly. It's about your energetic inclination. It's more about how you move through the world.
Got it.
And he says around 90% of people lean strongly towards either masculine or feminine.
Interesting. So if you're listening, the learner, think about it. Do you tend to be more driven by like achievement? That's often seen as masculine. Or are you more about connection, nurturing, which is often more feminine?
Yeah, it's about recognizing your natural energy, not about putting yourself in a box, but it can be helpful. Totally. So, okay, what about the core priorities of each essence?
Well, Deida says, someone with a masculine essence is often driven by freedom and their mission in the world, like what they're here to do. While someone with a feminine essence, they're more focused on love, connection, the flow of relationships.
It's funny, you can even see it in what kind of movies people like.
Oh, yeah.
Someone more masculine might be really into, say, a sports movie. It's about overcoming challenges and reaching a goal.
Yeah.
And someone more feminine might be drawn to a romantic comedy, all about the relationships and feelings.
That's a great example. And actually, Deida uses a similar one. He talks about how a man with a strong masculine essence might be super into watching a competitive sporting event.
Right.
But someone with a feminine essence might find that boring. They'd much rather watch a love story unfold.
I totally get that. So, okay, why is it so important to understand your own sexual essence? Why does Deida think it's so crucial?
He says it's fundamental for finding deep satisfaction in life. If you're constantly trying to be something you're not, well, that's going to create a lot of internal conflict.
Sure. You got to be true to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's especially important in relationships. When you have a couple and one person is strongly masculine and the other is strongly feminine, well, Deida says that this modern push for sameness, trying to erase all differences, can actually kill the attraction.
Oh, interesting. So you need that polarity.
Exactly. If you don't have that push and pull, that spark, it can fizzle out pretty quickly.
I see. It's not about going back to old school gender roles, but about recognizing that these energetic differences can actually be really exciting.
Right.
Okay, so building on that idea, Deida talks a lot about the importance of purpose, especially for men with a masculine essence.
Yeah, huge.
So it's basically saying purpose comes before the relationship.
That's right. And for a lot of people, that's going to sound kind of controversial.
Oh, yeah. It goes against a lot of what we're told about relationships, right?
Totally. But Deida's argument is when a man prioritizes his relationship above his deepest purpose, it weakens him. And it weakens the relationship, too.
Yeah. Okay. Explain that one. How does that work?
So imagine a guy who's super attentive to his partner, doing all the right things, but inside he feels unfulfilled, like he's not living his true purpose.
Yeah.
Well, that feeling, that emptiness, it's going to affect everything, even if he's trying really hard to be a good partner.
That's it. You can't pour from an empty cup.
That's it. Deida is saying that when a man is connected to his mission, he's pursuing what he's called to do. He brings this strength to the relationship, a solidity.
So it's not selfish to focus on your purpose. It actually benefits the relationship in the long run.
Exactly. And he actually talks about this whole idea of using family as an excuse to not go after your dreams.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, family is important, but constantly sacrificing your deepest calling, that breeds resentment, frustration. It diminishes you.
Yeah.
He even says it can lead to, like, a weakened, impotent existence. Pretty strong words.
Wow. Yeah, that's a serious statement.
It is. He's really emphasizing how important it is to figure out your purpose and then align your life with it.
So it's not about ignoring your responsibilities.
Right.
But about making sure you're also living in alignment with your deepest truth.
That's it.
So, okay, the learner. How do you actually figure out your purpose?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Deida's advice is to keep exploring, to not be afraid to let go of things that no longer feel aligned.
Interesting.
He says, each purpose we take on should be fully lived until it feels complete, empty.
Like you've squeezed everything out of it.
Exactly. And letting it go, that's a sign of growth. It means you're ready for something deeper.
Makes sense. So it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing journey. Okay, so we've talked about sexual essence. We talked about purpose. Now, how does Deida advise men to navigate relationships with women? Like with that feminine energy?
Yeah.
Because that can be pretty complex, right?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the most interesting things Deida says is women are not liars. Now, of course, he clarifies that right away.
I was going to say.
He's not saying women are always telling the literal truth.
Right.
What he means is a woman's words, they often reflect her feelings in the moment, not necessarily some fixed logical position. He uses this great analogy. He says to listen to a woman like you listen to the ocean. The sounds are always changing, ebbing and flowing, and that's like a woman's emotional energy.
So if she's like really upset and says something,
right,
you don't necessarily have to take it as like a permanent declaration.
Exactly, especially if there's a lot of emotion involved, because her feelings, they can shift really quickly.
Which can be frustrating for her, especially for someone with a more masculine essence.
Yeah.
You know, where words are seen as more solid.
Right. And he contrasts that with the way men often communicate. Like, a man's word is tied to his honor, his intention. But with feminine energy, it's more about expressing the feeling in the moment.
And Deida also suggests that women might be more attuned to subtle energy shifts.
Yeah.
You know, like in the environment or even an unseen realm of nature.
Yeah, interesting idea. Right. So basically, instead of getting caught up in the exact words, it's more about tuning into the underlying emotions.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, what else does he say about interacting with feminine energy?
Well, he talks about how masculine and feminine energies, they grow in different ways.
Oh, interesting.
He says the masculine thrives on challenge, on overcoming obstacle. But the feminine, it blossoms with praise, appreciation, positive reinforcement.
Oh, I see.
So, like, a man's instinct might be to challenge his partner, you know, to push her to be better.
Yeah.
But Deida says that mostly speaks to her masculine side. To really nourish her feminine energy, you need to praise her.
So instead of criticizing, you focus on what she's doing well.
Exactly. He even says to praise the qualities you want to see more of.
Interesting.
It's like you're watering the flowers you want to grow.
Makes sense.
Another key thing he talks about is offering career direction. He says that when a man is passive in the relationship, it creates resentment in the woman.
Because she wants him to lead.
Yeah. He needs to take responsibility for setting a course. And when he does that, it allows her to relax, to trust, to surrender.
It creates a feeling of safety.
Exactly.
So it's not about, like, controlling her.
No.
It's about providing a framework.
Right.
And he also talks about the importance of meeting a woman's emotions with, what does he call it? Imperturbable love.
Yeah, imperturbable love and unwavering consciousness.
Right.
But he also says, you got to know when to set boundaries. If a woman consistently refuses to open up, to be more loving, well, sometimes you need to walk away.
It's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Between being present and knowing when to protect yourself.
Yeah. And on a more practical level, he talks about being decisive. You know, as a man, he says that. Always saying things like, whatever you want. That actually diminishes polarity. Like, even in small decisions, a man needs to have an opinion, to take a stand.
Because that's part of what makes him attractive.
Exactly, that firmness. And, you know, he also talks about how men are naturally drawn to feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
Not just in women, but in other things too, like nature, music, art.
It's that receptive energy.
Yeah, and he sees that as a healthy, natural thing. He also talks about choosing a partner who's your opposite in terms of sexual essence.
To maximize that polarity.
Right.
And he has this interesting idea about the temperature of feminine energy.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's more hot, outwardly expressive, and sometimes it's more cool, receptive, and inward.
Makes sense.
And he says that a man's needs for these different temperatures might change over time. But he cautions against, like, thinking that means the relationship is over. It's just part of the natural ebb and flow.
I like that.
Okay, so now for the big question. What do women really want?
Ah, yes. The age-old mystery.
And according to Deida, the answer might not be what you think.
That's true. One of his big points is you got to choose a woman who chooses you back.
Yeah.
Like enthusiastically.
Yeah.
Neediness, that kills attraction. Like if you're constantly chasing after someone who's not fully into you, it undermines the whole thing.
I get that. It goes back to that idea of polarity. It's got to be a mutual thing.
Exactly. And here's a really interesting idea. Deida says that women don't actually want to be number one in a man's life.
Whoa, okay. Explain that one.
So it sounds counterintuitive, right? But what he's saying is what a woman truly desires is for a man to be dedicated to his highest purpose. Like his mission is what comes first. And that might seem kind of harsh.
Yeah.
But he's saying, no, that actually creates trust because she knows he's not going to abandon himself for her.
It's like he's got his own thing going on.
Exactly. And he uses this powerful analogy. He talks about a man going off to war.
Okay.
And the woman, even though she's obviously sad and worried, she also feels a deep sense of pride because he's fighting for something bigger than himself.
So his dedication to his mission, it actually makes him more attractive.
Yeah.
More trustworthy.
That's the idea. And he even shares this pretty personal anecdote. It's about this couple who are practicing sexual yoga.
Okay.
And the woman asks the man to ejaculate inside her. But then when he does, she gets upset.
Really?
Yeah. And Deida's interpretation is what she really wanted was to feel his strength.
Interesting.
Like his ability to stay true to his practice, even when she was trying to sway him.
It was a test.
Yeah. So sometimes what a woman says she wants isn't actually her deepest desire.
Makes you think, huh?
It does. And Deida goes on to say that a lot of a woman's complaints are actually content-free.
What does that mean?
So it's not that they're complaining about something specific. It's more like they're testing a man's presence, his strength. And he says that a woman, she really appreciates a man who gives clear direction, who's not easily swayed. Like indecisiveness creates insecurity.
She wants him to be solid in his own truth.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to something Deida calls your dark side.
Sounds intense.
It does. What's he talking about there?
So it's not about being a bad person. It's more about acknowledging the primal masculine urges that we often try to repress.
Okay.
Like he starts by looking at this fundamental drive for freedom that men have. And he says that this freedom, it's often experienced through release.
Release.
Yeah. The physical release of orgasm.
Right.
Or the competitive release in sports.
Right.
Or even the release of facing death.
Wow. Okay.
And he argues that masculine energy is constantly seeking this feeling of liberation.
Makes sense. It ties back to the overcoming challenges thing.
Exactly. And he says it's important for a man to own his deepest desires, even the ones that are considered like taboo. Like he uses the word ravish.
Whoa. Okay. Now that's a loaded word.
It is. But he's very clear that he's not talking about anything non-consensual.
Yeah.
It's more about this intense, passionate desire, like to completely immerse yourself in the connection with a woman.
Okay. So it's about channeling that primal energy in a loving way.
Exactly. And he even says that women want to sense that killer instinct in a man.
Not literally, of course.
Oh, no, of course not.
But like that ability to face challenges head on.
Right. To protect. To be strong.
Interesting.
And he also talks about the importance of a man's consciousness being able to meet a woman's energy. Like even when she's being intense. Or what some might call dark. He needs to be able to hold that space for her.
Without getting overwhelmed.
Right.
Okay. So last but not least, let's talk about consciousness, energy, and growth in intimacy. Like how does Deida tie all that together?
So he starts by saying that A woman's radiance, it often reflects her depth, her connection to her own life force. And he suggests that this can actually deepen with age.
As she gains more experience.
Exactly. Like, she's accumulating wisdom. And he even talks about the psychic weight of older women.
Interesting.
And he says, a man who's truly present. He honors that.
It's not just about physical appearance.
No, it's much deeper than that.
Okay, so what about growth and intimacy?
Well, he says that the responsibility for that, it's not necessarily equal, he says. The man is primarily responsible for the direction of growth, like setting the intention. And the woman, she's more responsible for the energy, the vitality.
He provides the map and she provides the fuel.
Yeah, I like that analogy. And Deide is really big on the man initiating growth. Like, he needs to be willing to cut through the bullshit, you know, those patterns of avoidance, in authenticity.
Right.
And he needs to demand real connection from both partners.
So he's not just going along with whatever's happening. He's actively shaping the relationship.
Yeah. And he also talks about how important it is for men to have solitude and to connect with other men, like those separate spaces. They allow a man to recharge, to rediscover his purpose.
And then he can come back to the relationship with a renewed sense of himself.
Totally. And then finally, Deida touches on some pretty interesting body practices.
Right.
Like, he talks about breathing down the front, which is this way of cultivating a powerful presence in your body. And he also mentions ejaculating up the spine, which comes from like tantric yoga and stuff. It's about consciously transforming sexual energy.
So it's not just about the physical act. It's about using that energy for something more.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here. This has been a pretty intense deep dive into Deida's work.
It has.
So let's recap some key takeaways for the learner.
All right, yeah. So we started by talking about sexual essence, masculine, feminine, and balanced, and how understanding your dominant energy can help you live a more fulfilling life.
Right. And we talked about the importance of purpose, especially for men, and how pursuing your purpose actually strengthens your relationships.
Yeah, and we looked at how to navigate relationships with feminine energy, understanding that it's fluid, that praise is powerful, and that men need to offer clear direction.
We also touched on what women really want, which often goes beyond what they say.
Right. It's about a man's dedication to his purpose, his inner strength.
And we explored that whole dark side concept, owning those primal urges and channeling them in a healthy way.
And lastly, we talked about the role of consciousness and how both partners are responsible for nurturing growth in the relationship.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. But even though Deida is mostly writing to men, I think there are some really valuable insights here for anyone, regardless of your gender or relationship style.
Absolutely. So the learner, we encourage you to really sit with these ideas, see how they resonate with your own experiences. And here's a final thought for you to ponder. How might understanding these fundamental differences between masculine and feminine energy, how might that lead to deeper, more fulfilling connections and a greater sense of purpose in your own life?
If you're interested in exploring these ideas further, definitely check out Deida's work. The Way of the Superior Man is a good starting point.
It's definitely a thought-provoking book.
For sure.
All right, well, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.